Here with Daniel Keller, 18-year continuous member of the ABCA, ABCA Youth Committee, Dave Kylick's Ethics Award Committee, worked with Dugout Captain, now MOJO, and has coached at every level of baseball. So Daniel, thanks for jumping on with me.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
This is, not new territory, but we haven't done a ton of youth podcasts, which is great. I think we're getting to that time of year now where youth baseball is going to start rolling here for everybody. And what does youth baseball need right now?
Fun. Yeah, two things pop into mind. I joined forces with MOJO Sports, an app dedicated to supporting coaches and making the game fun. And at the same time, I'm circling back to the youth ranks with my own boy. So I got a 9-year-old boy. So having come through, kind of like you said, coaching all levels, but spent a lot of time and still doing the private sector in the youth area. But now I'm coaching my kid. So I got, talk about experience, such great experience, seeing it through the lens of like, oh, I'm a parent now. This is all different, right? And but the thing that is striking me now, and we play pony baseball. I love the pony brand. I love all the brands, but we play pony baseball. And, this aggressive baseball with base running and holding runners. And I've got a young 9-year-old. The game is brutal. The game is slow. The game is boring. There's minimal balls put in play. And I know purist form, you can't change the game, but
we could try though. I mean, we can try. I mean,
yeah.
That's a thing, like just because it's always been that way and we're starting to lose participation numbers. I think now is the time to tweak some things here, whether it's modifications to equipment, modifications to how many people are on the field at the same time. Rob Haney is going to be on with me after this one, and he runs a T-ball league in the Northern Virginia area that it's a six person league. So they only have 6 kids on the field at one time. And so he and I are going to dive into that because he's got some modification that he's already doing. I mean, there's nothing to say that you can't change in the area that you're in right now and start to make some changes.
Amen. I think it's akin to boiling the ocean and trying to get a movement that would be really, really difficult. But having said, I've taken a real humble approach to the game, like diving back in. Youth baseball is beautiful in all that it teaches, and I've run a couple companies trying to teach lessons through baseball. And MOJO being the latest group to kind of take that flag and run with it, and just a perspective kick to the pants of why we're on the field of play. And then the development of athleticism and well-rounded athletes. We hear it on this podcast all the time. Where have my athletes gone? Scream those college coaches or pro coaches, right? And it starts at the youngest ages where my boy got picked off the first game, second base. And he had no clue what was going on. It was awesome, right? He's staring at the guy like, what are you doing with the ball? Tags him out. And what I realized, Ryan, I said, oh my gosh. And they picked 2 guys off and they picked a third. I said, this is the first game of the season. These guys are good at pickoffs. So that means they must have worked pickoffs 2, 3, 4 times at practice. And heck, we've only had 5, 6 practices. And I just started thinking about how backwards that was, that there wasn't the ground ball repetitions, the play repetitions, the swing and the hitting. And meanwhile, we were worried about stealing bases and picking guys off, which is competitive and positive. And certainly you're learning the game by getting picked off or picking off. But right, if that doesn't scream kind of how backwards this development is, I don't know what does. The fast forward again, everybody kind of that has kids can kind of giggle. We showed up the last game and umpire didn't show. And I put my hand up so fast. I said, I got this. I'll stand behind the mound. We're not calling balks. We're going to get through this. And we nurtured every pitcher through, I was exhausted after 2 hours. But I also manipulated the game. We said no stealing. Said no advancing on pass balls. And we hit every kid in the lineup, 18 kids or 20 kids got an extra at bat. We hit at least 15 to 20 more batters, put 6, 7, 8 more balls in play. And it was great. So it screams what you're talking about with Rob saying there's got to be modifications at some way to keep the action go, get the ball in play, have kids learn, have kids having fun, but I'll pause there.
And that's still an important piece to where I know everybody wants to focus on the games, but it's almost like a college inter squad setting where coaches are interacting with players on the field during games, because it should be just another practice component for them. We are, yes, you're in the competitive piece, but they still need that instruction. They need way more instruction on the game itself, how to actually play the game, than the actual game itself. And I think there's some things that you can do to bring that piece in. And we'll get to practice planning at some point. When did you guys, so this is just the initial start for that 9U team?
Yeah, we're 3 or 4 games in, and if to speak to kind of the greater mission of why I'm involved with the ABCA, we have 3 teams at our division, 3, and there's a couple reasons for that, but two teams at our level have opted for kind of the more competitive angle to the rec league, which is like some plus or extra, which pulls 40% of the pool away from this rec area, and now we've got 3 teams, so. We're 3 or 4 games into the season. The one thing that'll be nice is we'll be able to control a little bit more because there's just a couple of guys that are involved in leading these teams. We say, hey, what do we want to get done? How can we modify a little bit more than we would be able to if we had a real competitive 8, 10, 12 man league? So
when are you guys playing? When do you play games and then when do you practice?
Say that one more time.
When do you actually play games during the week and then when do you practice during the week?
We're on a Wednesday, Saturday schedule, but having 3 teams, the way that works, somebody's off every Wednesday or Saturday. So it's, again, Ryan, it'll be interesting because we're getting an extra day of practice every other week because we're getting a bye. So we're going to play less games, which I think will be actually, on one hand's a blessing because we get to practice a lot more than we would. We're doing 3 meetings a week, right? We got two games typically in a practice. And then every other week, one of those games is off. So we get a bonus practice. So we're 3 times a week.
How are you managing workload pitcher-wise with your pitchers?
Being a pitching guy, I tell you what, at 9U, I do very, very little pitching. As a matter of fact, we're going to practice today. And I saw my buddy who we coach with at flag football practice last night. I said, hey, you know what? I'm feeling guilty. I think I'm going to modify the practice plan and take pitchers the entire 90 minutes. I mean, that's what I do. I'm a pitching guy from college down to the rec leagues. And I find myself doing very little pitching instruction because of practice planning 101, right? And pulling myself off the field to dedicate with a couple of kids during the practice, probably one of the more difficult things to navigate for youth coaches, especially young youth coaches. We've done more interactive stuff, so more live arm scrimmage to get kids comfortable throwing strikes, saying we want you to get hit. You're throwing batting practice, get the hitters comfortable. Or, 4v4, 4 guys in the cages, quote unquote, or doing some sort of instruction or reps, 4 guys offense, 4 guys defense, and rotating around. And we've done that with kid pitch, trying to get more reps, hitter versus pitcher. But as far as practice planning goes, kind of getting into that, in the clinics that I do, I always recommend, hey, it's a one-off. It's one of those one-offs where typically once we get to batting practice, I exit stage left. And I'm calling 2 pitchers over and pitching and catching and flipping, and maybe having a third guy that's stepping in. So I like to have the next pitcher, helmet on, glove on, stepping in and taking pitches and seeing pitches, even if he's 6 feet off the plate, right? Let's advance the comfort level of both pitcher and hitter. And again, these are 9-year-olds. They're not super comfortable with seeing pitching or making pitches. But during batting practice, onesie, twosies, trying to make sure that I'm preparing kids, developing kids, and then I have yet to do it. We're only, a half dozen practices in, but trying to throw a nugget to those middle to lower tier kids that say, hey, I want to pitch. I want to pitch. I want to give them love. I want to find an opportunity for them.
We had that in the throwing program. So after we went through our defensive portion on the throwing program and they would long toss. And then when they came in, everybody flat ground. So everybody threw to a catcher. They'd throw their 3 or 4 pitches, and this is where we added in breathing routines with the young kids. I've done breathing routines with 6-year-olds, so this is where we would start with the foundational of, okay, I'm going to take my breath, I'm going to get my sign, I'm going to come set, take my breath, I'm going to pitch.
I love it.
And so it was every day they were throwing flat grounds, even if they weren't getting off the mound, but then mixed in pickoffs with that as well. And again, these are all defensive things that you can add in every day where you're touching it, micro-dosing that every day, first with the warm-up piece, the base running piece, than with the
Yes.
defensive catch. But yeah, we would have them flat ground every day with a pitcher catcher, even if it was just 10, 15 pitches. So they were microdosing, getting comfortable, getting off the mound, and mixing in pickoffs every day,
Yeah.
pickoffs to second base. That was part of their catch play. So they were basically microdosing all of those throws they were going to have to make every day. So they got more comfortable with it.
Would you do that with all players
Yeah,
or
all
your
players with
all players?
that, with
Love
those
that.
age groups, Jamie
Sure.
Carroll and I talk about this a lot. He's coached his son all the way through, even though he was coaching with the Pirates.
Yep.
He talked about it. He still has 13-year-old kids. Those kids he's had since they were 8 or 9 years old. Every one of those kids is pitched all the way through. And he said, and I'm going to talk about parenting here. He said it's driven some of their parents crazy, but he and I both were smaller kids that you just don't know when those growth spurts are going to hit. So if you can introduce all those kids to pitching all the way through, they may end up pitching for their high school team if they get to that point. Or hey, coach, I'm comfortable doing it. I've done it all the way through. And again, he's had some battles with his parents in that age group, but those kids are going to be better off for it when they get to high school.
Man. And I love practice planning principle of multiple touches, and that's a daily thing.
Yes.
But if you think about the comfort associated, even with mound progression, straddle, step on, look in, come set, breath work. I mean, that you need a dozen, you need 30, 50, 100 reps, and you need a dozen bad failures before that starts to be ingrained and innate. Base running, leadoffs, all that stuff. We do a lot of base running as warm up. Right.
Yes.
So at this age, we scrap, I know I want dynamic movements and blood flow. So we may rip through a dynamic hit to the head to bases or scrap that all together and say, look, we're going to get loose by reiterating base running fundamentals. Because I know base running is, 3 out of 10 practices gets kicked off because you run out of time. Yep. So we do a lot of that to try and get those touches. But I love that at the end of catch play going to flat ground, we got to hurry up and play catch better before we can do something.
Well, that's part of it too.
But
the base running piece, that's a dynamic. That was a dynamic warm up piece for me. Was the base running piece, okay? And so you can have 2 lines of leads and just working on going back and forth. I mean, there's multiple things that you can mix in to again microdose that as part of practice planning every day. And even if it's just a minute, they're going to retain that information better and what they're actually doing because you're hitting it small amounts every day and moving it on to the next thing. And anybody that's listening in right now, I have multiple practice plans. We're going to put some youth practice plans on the app. So anybody that has the MyABCA app, you can get those youth practice plans that I used to use with Jackson's group growing up. I never did anything during games with them, but I would help get them started in the right direction. Talk about that hitting piece. I think that's an important piece of hitting. Is the best thing we would do for them is we would soft toss. We would have everybody on the field. We would have guys working on their on-deck routines. We did on-deck routines with the young age group kids too. So working on how they actually work on deck, get ready for the hitter. They can work on their breathing routines at that point. But we would do 4 soft toss reps. 5th rep, guy was running out. They were playing it live. And then that base running group was also the hitting group. And then the defense rotated. As soon as the hitter rotated live, the defense rotated around. So first base went to second short to third went to the outfield. We'd only have 1 outfielder, so they were getting more reps. But those were all things with that. If you have a 9 or 10 man group, you could have two groups of 5, one's hitting base running, one's playing defense. And then that way it's not the old, everybody belly aches where they walk by the field where one coach is throwing and everybody's standing around. And not every coach is going to be good at throwing batting practice. That's part of it too with the young. You might have a first-time coach that isn't comfortable throwing BP. That's okay, soft toss. Let them soft toss, get a bunch of reps in, and then play it live. But anybody that wants those practice plans, either reach out to me, rbrownlee at abca.org, or jump on the MyABCA app, and they should be in there. So,
I love that. Yeah, one thing I would add to that has morphed since coming back to the youth game with my own kid. I absolutely love that. Reminded me of Dave Demarest down here in Southern California, La Quinta High School forever. So his phrase was soft throw scrimmage. So even at the college level, putting that ball in play. So the coach is at an L screen 38 feet away, able to throw sliders and changeups and in and out and control the game to a certain degree, but just getting that ball in play. And so soft tossing hitters, Heck, putting on a tee, getting the ball in play, live defense, pressure of base running. I love it. Another thing that has happened over the last couple of years coming back to the game is I've used pre-game as an opportunity. I say practice is for concepts, pre-game is for reps, and the games are for the players, right? So it's like I'm going to stay as much as you can, try and let the kids play during the game. But we really utilize those 45 minutes. But we go 45 minutes before a game, again at 8-9. I know that'll stretch to an hour or whatever. But we hammer those 45 minutes. They're really constructive. A lot of repetitions. And then one thing I do, Ryan, which has come up organically over the last couple of years, is we'll take hitters, one group, and ground balls, essentially another group. And that third group is where I live. And I put a mini diamond of bases down along the outfield line. And I'm covering the catch-all, the whether it's pitchers covering home plate, first baseman learn how to hold runners on. I might just work double play feeds or something fun or different just to get hands and feet firing. But that's been another great tip in the coaching clinic realm world. That mini diamond one, just teaching concepts through the mini diamond, and then recognizing that pregame is such an opportunity to get both repetitions, practice. You can make it what you want, but like, hey, if we did a soft toss scrimmage and repetition instruction theme during practice, well, I can make up for those lost swings, quote unquote, pregame. I can talk a lot less and say, hey, we're going to take a knee and throw Wiffles live arm, and we're going to go through, we're going to empty 2 buckets and get everybody 25 swings, and then we'll rotate. And it just takes a lot of the pressure and the anxiety off of a coach who thinks I have to do everything and I have to be everything. It's like,
so you're going like three 15-minute rotations. That 45-minute block, you're doing 3 15-minute rotations where they're rotating around every 15 minutes.
Yeah, and even quicker than that, we're probably at 7 or 8 minutes because we're doing catch play, and now we're going to do some flat ground work. But yeah, and then we're taking them down the line for some base running. Much like yourself, going through a on deck routine. I love the kids. Crisp uniforms all down the foul line, breaking on a leg lift like a college program or a high school program I've been involved with. And I think that's neat for the kids to be a part of. They see in our area, Southern California, they see Shohei and Trout and Mookie Betts doing it before pregame. Hey, we go down the line, we do our 2 maybe steel breaks just to get the blood flowing and check that box. Then we take a knee down the left field line and we talk concepts, we talk baseball. And I love this differentiation. So we'll finish our 3 stations, bring everybody to the foul line, take a knee, or do our couple of base runnings or lead breaks. Then we'll take a knee and finish the baseball discussion. And then as soon as we walk back to the dugout, I grab that bucket and it's all positions, batting lineup. It's like, all right, now I got to scrub this up against reality and realize they're 8 and 9. Yeah, the catcher's gear goes on this way. Your hats are going to go here, right? You got to go to like dugout monitor 101. So it's cool.
How are you organizing the dugout for them? How are you organizing it?
We got a dedicated dugout dude. I mean, DDD, man, that guy's job is, right? Hey, make sure they're having fun, but keep them off the fences. Keep, if they're drinking their Gatorade, make sure it's responsible. They keep the trash up. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, I'm sure I violate my rule every game, but I'm trying to keep my notes in my pocket and keep an idea of what we need to work on and what went well, who's making great plays so I can reference them at the end and be positive, and let the kids play. And the challenge is bringing that back to us is I do a lot of the coaching clinics here in Southern California, and I shared this with every rec league program I talked to. Last year, we finished our last 2 games with 1 ball put in play, the entire 2 games. And my boy is fantastic. He's mildly interested in baseball. I mean, at best, right? He loves basketball. He likes soccer, and he likes baseball. He likes hanging out with the fellas. But, I'm saying, hey, focus, pre-pitch, ready position. He's like, what for? Bobs, what are we doing here? We've got 1 ball put in play. It was to the first baseman who stepped on the bag in 2 games.
Yeah, my college teammates and I, we have a group chat going, and Jamie's on there. But somebody asked a question like, when should kid pitch actually start? And I said, this is where the Little League model actually worked. And everybody's so focused on size, but that's where the Little League model, when it was 9, when 9s played with 12s, That's where the Little League model was different, because it was usually your 11 and 12-year-olds that were actually pitching. It wasn't your 9s and 10s that pitched, unless you had a really advanced 9 or 10-year-old. But that kind of took care of that, maybe not as many balls put in play, because your 11s and 12s were going to throw more strikes.
Yep.
And again, everybody has different opinions on that. But I think that kind of took care of it a little bit and limited a little bit of the reps for your young guys, maybe not throwing too much at that point too, because your older guys were doing most of it. But again, there's no right or wrong with that too.
No, takeaway is just youth game needs action, right?
Yes.
Youth game needs fun, and development happens by making mistakes and making plays.
Yes.
So those are the principles we should be chasing, regardless of organization affiliation or level.
Yes. How can we help parents have a healthy perspective on development with the young kids, and maybe where their kids at comparatively, and staying away from some of the keeping up with the Joneses piece on that? Is there a way that we can help parents have a healthier perspective on where kids are at a young age?
Wow, what a
And that was from Eric Kimmel, by the way, who's on the youth committee with us. That was one of his questions. I thought it was a phenomenal question.
Well, there's so many different ways you can go with that, right? Like to keep the first thing that pops to mind is organization wide. How do we empower coaches to run good practices, to provide a great experience for the youth, right? And
also empower parents to do it at home too.
Amen.
I think that's the education piece that we can continue to get across to parents, is that yes, the facility time is important, the on the field time with their coaches is important, but you're probably going to be your most important component of your kid actually enjoying the game itself by spending time with them at home. And you talked about wiffle balls. Wiffle balls are your best friend. As a young parent who maybe doesn't know about baseball at all, wiffle balls are going to be your best friend with playing the game with your kids.
Amen. Yeah. Reps, right? Reps. There's so much to go with that. On the private side, I'm a pitching instructor, right? Now we constantly say the magic happens between sessions, right? The magic happens with daily touches in front of a mirror, daily catch play, one or two bullpens in between, but the magic doesn't happen when you're showing up for even a practice, right? The true development happens over good quality reps, which can be as easy as hitting wiffle balls, right? You take 100 swings, you're going to iron out a lot of flaws, and you're going to identify what are the flaws that need to be addressed, right? It's going back to your question about how do we provide a great experience for the kids and the parents, and then how do we provide objective feedback to see where they stand? Is that what?
And mastery is an important piece for them too. Allowing a kid to feel like they are mastering skills. That's part of them wanting to continue to play as well, as they feel like they're developing mastery. And a lot of that mastery happens on their own too, where even if it's just kicking them outside and hey, go throw the wiffle ball off the garage for a little bit, or even if you toss the wiffle ball up and try to hit it. Those are things that we've lost along the way that kids did a lot of. Okay, send them with a wiffle ball bat and a wiffle ball in the backyard. They toss it up and try to hit it and see how many times you can hit it. And those are some things that we can try to reiterate and bring back as well, that the self-mastery piece is an important part of wanting to continue anything that you're doing.
Yeah, two things screaming in my head that you just touched on beautifully. One, learning how to learn, right? Learning how to learn, whether it's an advanced pitcher tackling a curveball for the first time, realizing there's a process to learning a secondary pitch. And that process, it's going to be greatly different between changeup to curveball to slider to cutter. That's a learned skill, learning to learn and attacking a challenge and making a mistake and making an adjustment. I think that's the life lesson 101 that we've taught a young athlete to grind, grow, take feedback, self-coach. I love that.
Hey, where are you starting? How young, when you have a kid come in your facility that's doing pitching lessons for the first time, where do you start with them?
Oh, I'm a mechanical monster. So
if most important mechanics piece if there's somebody listening in, what are your most important pieces that you're trying to get with them when they first come in?
So if I'm going beginning basics pitching, I use a number system that identifies positions, and I use freezes and holds. And I'm no joke, Ryan. I'm 20,000 half-hour lessons deep. Like, I have a ring of a bucket top on my rear end that is permanently ingrained. 20,000 half-hour lessons. So I have a system that I can follow and to a T guarantee youth results. I go 1, 2, 3 through the chronological development. 1 is balance point, leg lift. 2 is a loaded power position, and 3 is a finish. But highest macro level, I address a balance point first. I call it position number 1. Always maintain a number 1. The most important thing, that we let it rip, full intent, having fun, never losing or any sort of intent through analysis. But balance point 1, and then I go all the way to the finish 3. So I bookend the athlete with strength and balance early, strength and balance late, and then we work in between to that loaded power position and start a little bit more movement based. So I know that was kind of top level, but
tap drill was one of the first play, and tap drill was one of the first things we did with the younger kids, is getting the feel for having their hand break on time with their knee drop. That was a big one for me, with getting the ball in a good position when their foot lands, is making sure their hand break and their knee drop were on time. Travis Lawler does a really good job. He's been a college guy. He's a high school guy. His Barnstormers will come out later on, but his dad was a longtime pitching coach, but he uses the count system also. And he does a really good explanation with that Barnstormers, the count system. It's awesome.
That's awesome. I got no problem with freezes and holes, and I understand they're,
especially for the young age.
Oh my gosh,
there's a time for block practice. There is, and when mastery isn't there yet, they need more block practice. Yes. I get the randomization piece, and that's important, but there needs to be some of that in the initial when they don't have mastery for what they're doing yet. That's there right. has to be some of that block training.
You've got to build the foundation for them. And you just brought up a movement or a principle that we would agree that the hands are going to separate when the knee starts down and out. So putting
that's
them
a foundational piece for all pitchers that have command. That happens. They all look different and they move different, but that's a foundational piece for almost every guy that can command the baseball, is that their hands are going to break when their knee drops.
Yeah. And what I think is you've coached them. You put them in a position where the athlete can feel, can focus, can address, and the freezes and the holds allow for that. And as quickly as possible, right? Like, I think our training system would move from positions to movements, but the positions help teach the movements, and they allow the athlete to chunk and focus on a specific area and have a feel. I always say there's no wrong, no right. There's just feel. And so we're trying to identify an accountability with a specific part of the body. And I love going right to, if you go all the way to advanced pitch mechanics and say, hey, we're going to ride the back hip and we're going to load and explode off of that back leg. I go right to a 8-year-old pitcher for the first time, a 7-year-old pitcher for the first time, saying, I'm going to put you in a balance point hold. And I want you to understand that the ultimate end goal is to use and feel and engage the backside when you break. Now, obviously that's going to be, a different foreign language.
We put the core velo belt on the young guys too in camp. Yeah. We would put the core velocity belt on just so they could feel it. We did that with the young kids too.
But it doesn't take away from the fact that you take a humble pie pill and realize that a freeze and a hold is a beneficial thing for the young pitcher.
Yes. Yep. For sure. Definitely. Eric also asked about ranking systems with the youth. I don't know if that's a can of worms we want to open. I understand. I think this is more of a parent thing than anything, is the parents want to see the rankings. I don't think kids buy into it as much, but I think the parents want to see it.
I would love to jump in and say, I have, with a heavy dose of humility, I live my life in the rec world, and professionally, I serve those parents. And I always say, I believe you can prepare and build an athlete to become the next Mike Trout or Mookie Betts, while also honoring the fact that the game has to be fun to keep them in the development, that the perspective has to be long range and a vision beyond where does my 9-year-old stand against the other 9-year-olds in the nation. So I would think it would be, everybody should take an exhale and a deep breath to say, look, if your athlete is elite, the talent will play through to a certain degree. We have to empower them, coach them up, make sure we put them in a position for success. But I almost would take the pressure off of a parent to say, look, keep the game fun, put him or her in positions to succeed with people not named mom or dad that are great influences, that understand, that have been there and done that, but have that, right, that healthy perspective. And talent's going to play through. It's like the big man's in charge much more than we think we are. But I think what ends up happening is, we either pigeonhole or force too many reps, early specialization in a sport or a position. And like you said, I was a catcher until high school, became a shortstop in a freshman year and didn't even pitch till junior, and then was a pitcher my senior year into high school and got drafted as a pitcher. It's like, and heck, I'm 6'1", $170. I should have been something else. Like,
and for me, this is where the Little League pony and Babe Ruth model have it figured out, because you're playing for an end of season tournament. And I think this is where we've gotten crossways with it, is because almost every weekend someone's playing for a championship rather than building for a championship at the end of the year, where, yes, you can figure out, you've got some time to figure out where guys should be playing. It's not immediately out of the chute where we're trying to win that first weekend, where we have some build-up time towards the end of the year where we can rotate guys around and girls around and see what their best position is for the end of the year, not for first weekend out of the chute. I think that's where the Little League pony and Babe Ruth model have always been good, because that's similar to a college and pro season. They're building towards something at the end of the year, and I think that brings some development pieces back, that we're not playing for a championship until the end of the year. So that builds in that development piece that, okay, we're going to let this thing play out a little bit, and we're not trying to win a championship the first weekend.
And yet we could still have a more aggressive fall season where maybe we play a little bit more competitively, right? We get the community aspect and the benefit of the spring. And I think we all need to realize the opportunity cost. Well, you could probably say it's significant if I only play 20 games or 30 games in the spring versus 70, 80, 90. I would argue that the athleticism development, the holistic athlete that you're building by playing the multiple sports and lowering those reps in the spring, or whatever that calendar is, that balance, right, Ryan, like that perspective balance. The fall could still have a more competitive region, and we could get after it a little bit more training wise or tournament wise. You can find that happy balance. But certainly, if we're looking at the playoffs and out here, Scherzer pitching on short rest, question mark, was he tired? Was he not? That happens for adults, professionals, one time a year.
They're
right?
adults.
They're adults, and they do it. They know what they're doing one time a year, right? We're putting our kids in that every weekend, saying, "Yeah, buddy, only threw 30 pitches yesterday. He's going to throw 60 today, and we're under the number." It's absurd and it's crazy, and that's the start that once you get into that engine, and now you're competing to be the ranked 11-year-old or 10-year-old, you have no choice. Like, I don't blame you for trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? We have to save ourselves from ourselves. Yeah. And so it really does. It's just screams to this competitive balance of keeping kids in the game on one hand, letting the game teach life lessons, which is why we're all on the planet, right? While also empowering those that are elite and God has blessed with the talent to take it and run with it, while also giving the tools they need to do that. So as coaches, I think you're ambassadors to all of them, but to think that, and we've had this talks a lot about ABCA and USA Baseball, is that we do a really good job training up those elite level national teams. And we're still trying to figure out the bottom of the iceberg, which is 94% of all the participatory athletes, right? That's the community that we're trying to reach with the youth committee, the ABCA, and even with the ethics committee. Is like, let's remember why we're all here. Yes. I mean, I don't know, let's get off our soapbox now, but.
Well, and I want you to touch a little bit more on the ethics committee too, because I don't think people know as much about that. Can you go through the nomination process? Because we've talked about that. Anybody
Yeah.
that's a member, you can nominate anybody for the ethics award. I mean, that's open to anybody. I think everybody looks at those awards and they think, well, that's just a college thing or that's a high school thing. Those are open to anybody that's given their life to the game of baseball.
And amen to that. We really need nominations for our organization and for those individuals that need to be highlighted. And there's a couple different things going on there. Thank you very much for bringing that up. The Ethics Award, I believe, it kicks off every year, fellows, at the convention. It's the first award that's given, and I think it's before we hear from the national championship coach, right? We're hearing about the ethics award winner, and it really puts in perspective the importance and the reason of why we coach. And actually,
I loved your article, your Inside Pitch magazine article is phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, and it comes back to like the community aspect of this group. This is a powerful group, and we all have somebody. And I'm on the committee, and I kick myself every year. Oh my gosh, I didn't submit somebody this year, right? Not every year. I'm fifth, maybe I'm batting 500 here, but we all have somebody that comes right to mind right now. And I challenge the listener to say, who's that person in your life that has been a lifelong baseball servant, that has given themselves up to the game and to the development of you as an athlete, you as a coach, as a mentor, or as a player when you were playing for them at the youth level, at the high school level, at the rec level. This award is for any coach that has been impactful. And ethics is a wide ranging, right, umbrella, but just says that it has served. And so there's a nomination form on the ABCA website. The code of ethics is listed, but you put ABCA Ethics Award nominee, you're finding it. It's not hard to find. But we need nominations. We're better off with more nominations. We have a strong pool. But those winners, to speak to that article I wrote recently for Inside Pitch, with Coach Walter at Wake Forest, that all organically happened through the ABCA, where I heard your podcast with Coach Walter. I read a book that he recommended, and it impacted me on my grinding Thursday night 6-hour session with 10 pitchers. I needed that fuel. I needed that perspective boost to keep me in my right mind to go serve. And that all comes back to this award of like, how do we keep and shine a light on those that are doing it right? And they can be that influence on the rest of us. They don't have to be 100 years old with 60 years of experience. They certainly can.
Yeah, that's not part of the criteria. I mean,
No.
That's not part of the criteria.
You can be a rec league youth coach that's 7 years out of the box, 7 months out of the box, that's doing something impactful in the community and leading the community of baseball the right way. And we aim to recognize those individuals.
Yeah. So, I mean, your takeaway on Lead for God's Sake, what was the biggest takeaways with that book?
Oh, man. So Lead for God's Sake, Kentucky high school basketball coach, perspective on what is important and why God's put you on the earth. Why do you coach? The challenge here's a great tangent for we baseball coaches on this podcast. I as early as 2019, I thought I was going back into baseball as a full-time coach. And I'm 45 years old. So this is like, I'm 40 years old. I don't know what I was thinking, to be honest, Ryan, but I had this great experience of diving into the game and charging through the ABCA ranks to find networking, and had a paying gig job ready to go. I'm an entrepreneur in the baseball world for 25 years and coached the whole way through. I said, it had some changes, man. This would be a great time to dive in and really make a run at it. Makes sense. I can compete with the 24-year-olds. Let's go. Not so much. And ended up going all the way through this exercise, had the paying job right in front of me. And with two young kids and a wife and a home, I said, what am I doing? I can't do this. I can't pull this off. Right. And here's what it left me with, though. Why do I coach? Right. Am I coaching for the ego, for a paycheck, to say, look at me, I'm a D1 pitching coach? And while a big part of me was like, look, that challenge of that, having the resources to actually do things at a certain level that I've never been able to, would have been fantastic, right? I listened to the tools and the data tools and the Rapsodo tools, and I go, oh my gosh, I've never been exposed in an environment where I could support kids with those tools. So that was intriguing to me. But at the end of the day, what it said was, why do you coach? And so we all need to look at it and go, why do we coach? And I know that book, which was Lead for God's Sake, hit me right between the eyes saying, we coach for relationships, right? We coach for service. We coach to leave it better behind us so we can impact developing young people. And that's only because I got gray hairs here. I can say that with like eloquence because I didn't know. I wanted to win and compete. I still want to win and compete. I'm stepping on some 10-year-old throats on Saturday. Let's go. But why do I coach? Shoot, I eliminated base running and running on pass balls to everybody's chagrin at the last youth league game I was at because I want to see the kids develop. I want to see them play.
And an easy question is ask your players if they like it better. And they're going to tell you they enjoyed that game better than the other one. And I think that, when we would go to practice with Jackson and he was a tough critic, I would be like, hey, did you enjoy practice today? Yep. Okay. It must have been a good youth practice playing. He enjoyed practice. Do you like it when I'm there? Yes. Okay. That's good. Cause he would have been honest with me. He would have been like, no, I don't want you around anymore. But that was all I needed to hear was that I enjoyed practice and I want you to be there. So that was good enough for me on that end. And we need to ask the kids what they want. I get into those arguments all the time with coaches and parents. Like, that's not what the kids want. I'm like, well, have you actually asked them? I think you would get some really good information from them if you would ask them if you're actually enjoying it.
And to the coach's perspective, that's so well said. This MOJO outfit I'm working with, they send a notification after practice that says, was your practice fun? You have to rate the fun factor and was it effective for you? And I was doing a project for them and working with the Giants. The youth initiative for the Giants has some great post-practice introspective questions for you as a coach, right? We coaches should be fulfilled. We should be trying to lose ourselves through practice. I think coaches should be selfish to provide a practice plan that allows them to coach and give and serve, not to be frustrated, angry, demanding and calling for focus from a 9-year-old. Like, no, your practice plan needs to create focus and opportunities for you to teach, right? Individual rotations and we can go nerd out on the practice plans, but at the end of practice to take a quick look and go, hey, what was good? What needs work? There's no more responsible question to ask yourself. And the same thing would go true. Did we have fun, kid? Right? What did you like best about this? What part did you not like? And then maybe if I still need to work that skill, obviously, or that technique or whatever that drill is, I got to find a different way to do it.
Because that's part of serving. You're there to serve the kids. That's why you're there. And so shorter stints during practice keeps you away from some of those headaches you get because now we're moving on to the next thing and it keeps it hopping for them. But it also makes the time go better for you as a coach too. That 90 minutes that you have flies when you're doing something for 3 minutes and moving on to the next thing. That 90 minutes is going to fly for you as a coach. It's going to fly.
Right. Practice planning 101
for sure. Now, hey, turning down that job, is that your biggest fail forward moment, or do you have other fail forward moments that stick out to you? That's something you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now was one of the best things that happened to you.
Wow, great question. Hadn't even thought about really the fact that that's a fail forward moment. But yeah, absolutely. That's a big one that I don't dwell on it at all. Right. I think that the challenge of that 23 to 33 coach who's grinding it out as a grad assistant and charging the ladder, I would never take that dream away or tell someone not to do that. Right. I got a young kid who I'm working with in the private sector who stepped away from the game after graduating as a senior and we kind of gave him a long leash, and he'll be a second-year college kid and came back saying, hey, I think I might want to play. And I'm like, holy smokes, let's go. Get on the field, right? You got the rest of your life to work. Oh, my gosh. So exhausting all possibilities. I feel as if, I laid it all out there as a coach on the field professionally. And I also think, why do I coach? I can't wait to be old and gray and back in a more competitive uniform, if that makes any sense, right? Now I know that my position is life. I get scratch my itch, and I get the aggressive training, having done pitching, worked as a pitching coach for 23 years. A couple nights a week, I'm still grinding. I'm still learning. I'm listening to Cressy's podcast, dear friend. I love Wolforth and Cressy and Jager and all the guys and Wheeler that
they've done a lot for the game.
Oh my God,
they've done a lot
it's
for
accelerated
pitching, all those guys.
Right, so much so fast the last 5 years. But I realized personally that my path is different at this point, and I'm a father and a provider, and so being in uniform for my last stop was a community college stint. I can't do it, and I've come to the point where I'm happy with that. Right, I still pop my head in there and give and serve and jump in the bullpen a couple times in the fall, a couple times in the spring. But, different strokes for different folks. I would say this, though, grind it out, right? Like get to the point where you can hang your hat at night and say, look,
I gave it everything I had. No matter how it turns out, I gave everything I had.
Amen.
Hey, what are the biggest things you learned from Scott Pickler?
Sitting on a bucket next to Scott Pickler, I always say I learned more sitting on a bucket in an afternoon than years on my own. Seeing the game with a different lens. I can vividly remember keeping my mouth shut and watching Coach Pickler position infielders and outfielders and the 2-out adjustments and the hybrid of bringing a defense in with a man on third base, but then pushing the middle infielders back 5 feet, just the subtleties to the game. I spent one summer in Cape Cod coaching with Coach Pickler, and this is probably 10 years ago now. And just blown away by, I'm juggling lineups and I'm just the pitching guy, right? But trying to figure out having somebody prepared for this part of the lineup. He's 3 innings ahead, thinking when we get to the 4, 5, 6 hole, we got lefty, lefty, righty, lefty. We got to have the lefty prepared. It blew my mind, the management skills.
That's part of being in a dugout for that long. It slows down, and that's for people that aren't baseball fans. They're like, well, it's too slow. I'm like, you've never been in a dugout before. Once you've been in a dugout and all those decisions that have to be made to be prepared for all the what ifs of what could possibly happen, you have a much larger appreciation for what goes on during a baseball game.
I want to share too, because Coach Pickler's become just a dear friend and a mentor, and I look up to him so much. The humility of I feel like there's a humility bell curve, and the Hall of Famers, going back to almost the ethics question, right? Like we charge with a huge ego you have to compete, especially at the highest levels of coaching. And then they achieve some sort of level of success, and they kind of come down on the back end where it's almost like, well, I've achieved everything, quote unquote. He's got 6 state titles and national coach of the year, now as a Hall of Famer. The humility with which Coach Pickler specifically will dive into a bullpen session and we will curse each other out and get after it and grind is so refreshing, right? And I think I've seen that from Coach O'Connell, who's running the ethics committee, Coach Shelley, who just retired. Like there is such an admirable humility that comes with experience, right? And so Coach Pickler exudes that still. He's still on the field grinding, but he wants to learn with the rest of us, right? The ego is gone. It's long gone, which doesn't mean
that's part of as a young coach too. You don't realize it till you get older. I think all of us as young coaches, you don't see it until you're in it long enough, and then you have a much bigger appreciation for those guys that were older when you were a younger coach, just because you see it from a different vein. And again, they've earned that respect. But it's amazing how humble the guys that are extremely successful are. And maybe it's because they can breathe a little bit and they're not fighting it as much, that now it's okay. I can, not that you ever back off, but I can take a little bit of a deep breath here, and I have a much better perspective on what things actually are.
Well, how about that book, Lead for God's Sake, saying the challenge would be for us younger coaches, I put that in heavy quotes, but for us to try and assume those character traits of leaderships and the world's best coaches, the world's best leaders before we're there, right? Like, how can I assume that trust and that perspective that says, I'm going to serve, I'm going to do the right thing, and simplify decision-making. You even said something earlier about like, I know what I can do today, right? It may come up in your questions, but I'm reading the book I'm reading right now, which will come up. This line is
What's the title for people that are listening
so
on the audio?
The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life.
Who
The
wrote
Lion
it?
Boyd Varty.
Okay.
So BoydVarty. Boyd Varty. I just picked it up recently, so I'm about a third of the way through. It's a real short book, but the line, it's these lion trackers in Africa who basically just, they wake up in the morning and they hear a roar and they go find the lion. And so there's so many life analogies to it. But he said, I have no idea where I'm going, but I know how to get there.
Love it.
And it just smacks me across the face. All they're trying to do is find that first set of tracks. So they don't know where they're going to end up, but they know exactly how to get there. And I'm like, wow, what a powerful, great line, right? Like, but this book came recommended of a podcast that we were talking about. But the Lion Tracker's Guide to Life is my current go-to.
Love it. Hey, let's get back to MOJO. Again, this is a great idea. I love it. MLB's teamed up with this, with Boys and Girls Clubs. It looked like 50,000 subscriptions to Boys and Girls Clubs. And this is kind of what we're talking about from a practice planning standpoint. How do you make the game fun? Maybe
Right.
some of those itineraries or checklists that you can send off to people. Just dive in a little bit more on that with the MOJO app.
Yeah, quick background. 6 years ago, I wrote a business plan for a company called Dugout Captain, which was a digital clipboard. So basically, we wrote a curriculum, a developmental curriculum, and with bullet point objectives at each of the ages, and then practice plans to achieve and work towards those objectives. And then we filmed a drill library to fill the practice plans. And then the real cool tool was this digital clipboard where you could grab a practice plan and share it to your coaches and parents. And the whole concept is to make the game fun again, to make practice more effective, more fun for the coach, which in turn benefits the kid and keep the kids playing the game. Through a long drawn out, blessing from above, I crossed paths with MOJO and shed a tear because I said, oh my gosh, these guys did it. And the technology associated with this MOJO app is remarkable. And I say that with humility again, because I tried to do it for 5 years and failed forward to end up with an outfit and a crew full of A-list players that are doing this the right way. So it's a free tool that is a download. There's hundreds of thousands of members already, and it's skyrocketing because ease of use. You're 5 or 6 clicks in and you got your first practice plan based on your ages, your playing level, your roster size, and it's going to spit out ready-made practice plans for you and guide you your whole season, and then gives you the flexibility to start looking at activities or drills and figure out and build your own practice plans. So it's earth-shattering the effect that it could have, and it has football and flag football and softball and soccer and basketball as well. But to empower coaches to run a better practice is everything to what we've talked about in the game, right? Like, let's have a more fun practice, a more energetic practice with quicker rotations, et cetera, all the principles. And yet, without asking every parent to go boil that ocean and become that great coach, let's give them a tool in their hands that's 2022, app driven. It dropped my jaw and I shed a tear and I said, we need to work together. And that's what I'm doing.
Hey, sharing practice plans with parents is a great idea, by the way. It almost goes to that education piece where they're doing their homework at home too, that, okay, you send the practice plan out to the parent, they can relay to the kids like, hey, this is what you're doing today. And maybe that's a way to get them out in the backyard too, is like, hey, here's what you're doing today. Maybe we can work on some of these things that you're going to do at practice today before you get there.
Oh my God. Amen. You can get players familiar with it. Can you imagine your players being familiar with your practice plan before they show up?
And that's college model. We always send it out before at the college level. It's a great way to allow them to know what's going on that day and be able to mentally prepare for what they're going to go through that day of practice too.
Yeah. Creates a we thing, not a me thing. You've got some accountability and some ownership of today's workout. And at the youth ranks, people are always struggling to get participation of parents and volunteers. You're putting people in a position to success. You're coaching your fellow parents to get on the field and support you. Yeah, it's the biggest no-brainer, right? It's just a complete no-brainer that needs to happen. I believe it will happen. It's just, if the market is ready and to support, there's a for fee portion that is basically taking one-on-one at home. If you want to take it to the next level, you can. But all the coaches' tools, which I'm involved with, are free, which is just remarkable, right? Like there is a purpose and a mission to get these, to reverse these trends. You talk about the participatory numbers going down. But we need kids back on the field. We need kids playing. In our case, it's baseball, but it's not unique to our sport, right? It's a youth challenge to keep activity levels up, to keep them playing and competing and on a field of play. Here in Southern California, we got to keep the fields themselves, right? We struggle to find open space and green space. So this is a really, really cool tool that I think has a chance to support that effort and that challenge.
Hey, you talked about using the count system with the young guys on the mound. Would you transfer that over to your college guys too? We're using those same checkpoints. And I think for me that's the best instruction, is something you can use with a 6 or 7 year old kid. And then you can also use it with a 23, 24, 25 year old.
So what I would, yep, exactly right. I believe we build a foundation, and we might race through that very, very quickly, Ryan, obviously with a college guy, but I'm taking them through. I want them to be their own instructor. So I'm taking them through, and I'll even tell them if I need to appease to an ego, hey, here's what I would teach to the young guy, and here's why. And really, I want to make sure they know. A lot of these elite athletes, they move real well, but they don't know what they're doing. And I always wonder if 80% of the big leaguers have no clue what they're doing. They're just so big, so good, so fast. They get cycled through 3.5 years of their 5 years of service and they're gone, right? But those that stick, I think, become students of the game. They really understand what they're doing. They become professionals. The youngest ages, at the college age, I would do, and again, this was community college, is a really, really unique level. I would have my pitchers come in a full week early, and we did a week-long boot camp. And so we would dive in with video analysis. And again, these kids are turning over every year, maybe two. So I'd get a whole new batch of kids. Like, well, shoot, we got to train these guys up to understand we want to be addressing them as college pitchers. But a lot of these community college guys are good arms, have never pitched. Holy smokes, right? We got to give them a foundational base. We got to give them the language that we speak here at the program, the techniques that I follow, having banged my head against this wall for 20 years. So I would do a 1 week, really intensive pitchers only boot camp. And we would lay down position 1, position 2, position 3, but we would get to movement much more fast, much quicker. But yeah, the principles hold true. And obviously the calendar was different as well. So in the fall, we would grind through more mechanical training. And as we flipped the calendar after January, we would be much more game prep. We're breaking pitches down in the fall. We're much more competitively using those pitches in the spring. And that ramp up's real quick when you come back from Christmas. I always remember we had like 3 weeks between coming back after winter break before our first game. So it was go time, right? As soon as you came back.
How can we get facility owners and high school and college coaches communicating better with each other?
That's a great question.
I mean, you've been on both sides of it now. How can we streamline that information? Because both are important. College guys and high school guys can't be with their guys all the time. And then you're going to have somebody that goes into a facility. So for me, from a holistic approach piece, every part of that is important for a player's development. And so how can we streamline that communication piece from the facility side to the competitive coaching side? How can we streamline that communication with each other? And what are some tips that maybe work, that maybe what some coaches aren't doing right now?
Okay. I've got a great answer for you that popped up as the facility owner. I think you're right. I think that there's a
it doesn't need to be there. That friction that we have right now with some coaches and facility, like it doesn't need to be there. Like we can eliminate those roadblocks and again, get back to serving the individual athlete.
Well, and I think you're right. Like, why is that friction there?
It's an ego thing. It's an ego.
You're right. You're right. It might be, or it might be some questionable instruction being taught or something that you're not vibing with. So the thing that popped in mind for me is relationships, communication. Right now, high school coaches are so strapped for time. One of the things as a facility owner that I did in the fall was we hosted success seminars. So on a Wednesday night, we would try to host an intro to high school, and we would host a high school to college, and we would have a professional scout come down. So we wanted to kind of serve all the markets. We did it like on a Wednesday night, late, ish, when the shop was closing up 7:30 or 8, and went for 90 minutes. But I had all the area high school coaches come down. And so we'd put them on a panel, almost, like a press conference panel, and the community would come down, and we'd open forum it. So we'd proctor the discussion and it was a marketing thing for the high schools. Come down, let people see who you are, what your philosophies are, answer a couple of questions. But I know that from my perspective, as well as I was building relationship and rapport with all the local, the geography of 10 miles around me, I needed to know real well. But I think that broke down the barriers when all of a sudden there was a trust, where if they had a real issue, before they would say, don't go over there, don't go see those guys, they'd pick up the phone and call. Yep. What's going on with this guy? What's he doing? Right. And then we became an asset where they realized, look, you only get so much time on the field. They need more. And I think parents are vastly out of whack with their expectations. Like, it's hard to find a dedicated pitching coach that has the hours of 1 to 4 p.m. available for free, right? Like, you're not finding the next pitching coach you'll see on TV, but you might find someone who's got a heart of gold who's going to help. So with that, like, the high school should be looking at, hey, I got a professional in the community that can really help my kids. Yep. So I don't know where that disconnect comes.
Yeah, and did you go watch your guys competitively? Like, you have a kid come in the facility, would you go watch them pitch competitively if you had an opportunity to do that?
Not nearly as much as I
could. It's hard.
Like,
those are your competing hours, but that would be the other thing that I would tell a facility owner is, if you can, go watch them actually play a game, whether it's high school or college. Go watch them, because then the coach on the other side sees that you're actually making an effort to see if, okay, what you're working on is translating to that side of it too. I think that's an olive branch piece that I know it's hard that facility owners are strapped for time to get their lessons in, but that's also an olive branch piece, is that, okay, I'm working with one of your guys, I'm actually come and even if it's for just an inning or just pop over there, I think that's an olive branch piece that you can bridge the gap between the facilities and the competitive coaches also.
Amen. I think that's a great point, Ryan. I know introspectively, I really struggled with that, especially as I had a family, right? Yes. Those nights and weekends became even more strapped. I got out of the facility business for that reason. I saw my peers getting divorced. I saw different things happening because you're always gone. But what a great point. Building rapport with those coaches by them seeing you actually, oh, you're coming to my shop, my field, and seeing your guy work. Plus, because that is one of the great challenges to the private instructor is, you train them in the bullpen, but you have no idea how they compete. And you do need to see that. So I vividly remember as a younger coach, Saturdays trying to make a round across a couple parks to to see a couple rec league guys, get over to the high school, see a couple high school guys, and then, half of Saturday becomes mine, but not much work.
Or even if every parent has an iPhone now, hey, bring me their game footage, whether you're working with a hitter or a pitcher, like, hey, bring their game footage in to me. So I have an idea how they're doing in a game setting. Like that's part of the holistic approach to all of this, is that the facility side is important. The training piece is important, but the competitive side too, because again, that goes into that mastery piece. Like, you should want to know what you're working on in the facility is helping them master their performance in a game setting.
Right. I was watching a thing with our buddy Steve Springer just randomly, and he was talking about mental, physical, and approach, or mechanics, mental, and approach, and how he over the years has morphed, and now it's approach, mental, mechanics, right? Yeah. So realizing that we're all not as important as we think. The competing has got to be number one, right? Your mental and your approach to on-field competition is how is this athlete translating it to the mound, or to the batter's box, or wherever his area of focus is am I helping him apply that? And the same thing comes back to coaching 101 and coaching clinics and tools that help coaches. Is like, we can coach you up with on technique of the swing, but when you're dealing with 9-year-olds, you could be the world's greatest hitting instructor and never have a chance to teach anything remotely close to hitting, because this is a different sport, right? This is a whole different animal. So
breathing and setup, that was where we started with the young bucks. was breathing routines and then get them set up in the box. Rob and I will talk about that with their T-ball league. That does some really cool modification pieces. They have the feet in the boxes when they're playing, so they know where their feet are supposed to go. Like, it'll be good info for anybody that's trying to master the 6 to 9 year old age range. They're doing some unique things. Yes, yeah, again, they need those reminders, and that saves you time as a coach too, because you're not having to tell every kid like, hey, here's where your feet go. Here's, again, those are some time savers for you that you can get back to the rep piece also.
I'm loaded with those things, but we call it 2 toes, blue cones. We got blue cones in front. Your toes go to the blue cones. You step to a green cone. And the athletes know after their first practice, you're always going to find 2 blue cones. And you're actually going to find a green cone. I don't know why it's blue and green, but 2 toes, blue cones, step to the green. That's all you're allowed, right? And again, the reality is you'll save 6.5 seconds per swing, but you'll save that times, 100, 150 swings. You only got 90 minutes. You just save 5 minutes. That's a big deal, So a bunch of those tricks. That's a great one.
Hey, you and I have talked about working out. How are you carving out time in your day to be able to work out for your own self-care?
I'm evolving and flowing and changing. A couple of years ago, it took me till I was 40 years old to hit the 5:30 a.m. club. I spent a couple of years at the 5:30 a.m. club. That was a life-changing, very strange. I'm away from that now, but that put me to bed earlier, which is where I'm struggling now. Right now, with kid drop-off schedules, I do a lot immediately after kid drop-off. I kind of squeeze it in before the day starts. And then there's a midday lunch break. But I've been real consistent. I still play hoops 1 day a week on Sundays. I get my long jog on Saturdays, and then I'm hitting the gym at least 3 days a week during the week. So I know this. I'm a better coach. I'm a better parent. I'm a better father. I'm a better husband when I'm working out. And I've got to the age where I know that it's important to me. I'm going to make time for it. And my employers know, and my wife knows, and my kids know. If daddy doesn't do this, he's a, what, I don't know how the term is, but he's not as good across the board. It's important. So eating, moving, sleeping, those are those creep.
What about nutrition go-tos? You have nutrition go-tos?
I married well.
I did too. I was fortunate with my family. My mom and dad, it was always fruits and vegetables and fresh food. So like I got in that habit of this is how you actually eat. And then my wife as well. Like she and I have a great relationship as far as food goes. Yep. Because there's the right things in our house. And it's just like any other habit. Like if junk's around, then you're going to go to it. But if it's not there, then you got to pick other nutrition options.
Yeah. I completely agree. I've been blessed to have kind of grown up in a household where nutrition was ingrained. So I don't follow any particular diet, but I don't eat fast food. I'm doing some intermittent fasting things. I'm just constantly studying and trying to be the best I can be. So I know that I did just think of the coaching lifestyle. And I knew I would get that anxious feeling of like, holy crap, practice starts in 90 minutes, practice starts in 30 minutes. And I'd always every day be racing to the field. And a lot of that would carry with me because I feel like I wasn't prepared well enough for my kids. Hope all the coaches kind of can share like, yeah, I feel it. I understand it. And I know those are the days when I would grab something on the way, and so I'm not in that lifestyle anymore of having a 1 o'clock practice. Again, we would early afternoon out here in Southern California, most schools, but
I'm reading some Joe Dispenza right now, and some of it's out there stuff. But he talks about with cortisol, like people get addicted to the stress hormones. So like someone that is just continually stressed, once they start to make some changes, their body fights it a little bit because they're not getting those stress hormones, and so that's kind of how you see people have reactions over and over where it's like, why are they reacting that way? Well, it's because they're trying to overload their body with those stress hormones, which is something I had never even really thought about. And again, that's why it's hard to make some changes sometimes too. But yeah, people get addicted to those stress hormones also. So they almost do that to themselves where they cause stress because of their daily habits, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I've simplified to eating, moving, sleeping. Eating, moving, sleeping, right? Like if I can't, we
What's your
tell our
intermittent
players to handle
fasting
the football.
schedule? I mean, do you have a strict intermittent fasting
No,
schedule?
no,
Mine's just
very,
nothing
very,
after 8 p.m. That's what I've stayed with for about the last 3 years. 3 4 years is no nutrition after 8 p.m. Now I'll
yeah.
eat a lot before that point, and I do spread it out. I do like the meal frequency plan, and that's something that I took from when I was coaching players. You're asking them to try to get meal frequencies in. I do the same thing that I was asking them to do. But yeah, the nothing after 8 p.m. has been a life changer for me as far as waking up feeling better.
Mm, yeah. Big challenge for me currently is that life pushes me later.
Yes.
Where if I'm in a cage, Thursday night's my big night in a cage. I'm not getting home till 10. I haven't eaten since 3:30.
Yep.
And then there's an evening with my kids till 8:30. There's a night with the fellas playing hoops till 9 p.m. That's why I mean, again, we're all studying, we're all evolving from sleep schedules to workout schedules to nutrition. So the intermittent fasting stuff for me is pushing my first meal later.
Yep.
But then I'm trying to do a workout in the morning. So sometimes my energy's dragging. I'm wondering, is this, should I be going to the gym on nothing? Maybe
I
I'll
say
wolf
all
down a
bets are
banana.
off. That's part of evolving too. Is as your kids get older, it's easier to do some of those things. I was white knuckling it when I was coaching college and my kids were little. I was white knuckling it, just trying to get through the day, and as we all are. So as your kids get older, it's easier to do some of those things. So anybody listening as young kids, like just try to get through it as best you can, and if you get one thing in a day or a thing in a week, like you've done your job as a parent.
Yeah, and honor your fundamentals through consistency, right? Those, I think there are those principles that we can like avoid the drive-through, find a way to avoid that drive-through, right?
Yes.
But I'm not, by no means am I preaching over my skis here, but sleep is important, nutrition is important, and it makes you a better coach, makes you a better father. So I have gotten more and more comfortable professionally saying, look, no, I'm unavailable. I'm working out.
Yeah.
And going away from when the young, like, no, I work till 2 a.m. I'm available. Let's go. I'm always available. I'll answer your email in an hour. It's like, well, no, actually I won't. But I will responsibly kick some behind when I need to perform. I'm going to put forth a great effort and a good product, but I'm going to do that because I'm honoring my principles, my fundamentals of eating, moving, and sleeping.
The breaks are important. And that goes back to youth sports too. Like the breaks for them are important. Like, they're going to retain more information and their skills when they get a break here and there. And that might be an off-season break from it. And I was going to ask you that with your 9U kids. I mean, what are you going to recommend when your season's done? What are you going to recommend to them for the off-season?
I think I've got it easy in that my kid is a right in the middle of the talent spectrum. We play baseball in the spring. That's it. So, and again, I say that I've got it easy because he hasn't morphed into a more involved baseball player, which at this point is great for me. I'm really, really sensitive and familiar with the seasonality and the annual cycles. But if he were more aggressive, we would do what I mentioned earlier. We would play rec ball in the spring, take a big shutdown in the summer, have a more competitive short season fall. More game reps, lower RPMs as far as pitch counts or extreme levels, shut it down in the winter and go again. That's what I would do at this age if I had a more competitive athlete. At this point, we're playing flag football in the fall. We're playing soccer in the fall.
That's how Jackson was too.
We're playing basketball.
His activities allowed him to get a break because he was playing 4 and 5 sports. So it just allowed him to move into the next thing. So we never really had to even address it with if he should get shut down because he was moving on to the next sport.
But then you could share, and he ended up continuing and playing and blossoming and developing. And so, the perspective and the expertise you can offer.
And then he focused on track because track was his best thing later on, but he stayed with 4 and 5 all the way up until high school. And then once he got into high school, he started to make some decisions to whittle it down, but stayed with basketball, track, and baseball until he got to junior year with COVID. So, I mean, he stayed with a lot of it, and was serviceable and everything. And again, I think, as a parent, I think if he would have been like, well, yeah, I want to spend more time on this one thing, we would have been like, okay, then that's what you're going to do. So I do understand as a parent, if you have a child that wants to focus on one thing, but you also have to be the adult in the room at times. But again, that's where the warm up piece, those one sport athletes, that's why your important warm up piece is important for them, and making sure it's different. And we've had great Joe Eisenman and Jimmy Onati have done great youth stage talks on how you actually have a warm-up. So go watch those. You're going to get a proper warm-up with animal movements and a bunch of different things that you don't normally see that are going to allow kids to stay healthier as they get older.
Right. I love the line that the market will play too. Like if and when an athlete needs to focus on a particular sport, the market will tell them.
Yes.
Right. Always, my answer to parents is always like, "Hey, was your kid playing? If your kid's not playing, and then he's not good enough, you might need to focus. The game's going to pass him by, right? Like, don't overthink it. But if your kid is the stud, and you are going back to Coach Kibler's question, but if your kid is the stud and he's a high-ranked 12-year-old, he's fine, right? Like, he's going to be fine. He's not the guy we're worried about, right? Like, he can go play football, he can go play soccer, go play basketball, and he's still going to be a stud, right? Now, at some point, either he'll decide or the market will tell him, hey, you're going to have to maintain that level or that difference or that gap. You're going to have to really work at this. Well, yeah, be responsible and honor that. But until then, I think the theme for today as a perspective is we can all take a deep breath, keep the game fun, keep the kids playing, find great help. And you had a great comment about making sure that your kid wants you on the field still, and really being able to read that room. Like, are you just telling daddy that because, we're buddies, or you're being honest with me here? Yeah. I think that's really important.
What are some final thoughts, or maybe something I should have asked that I didn't?
Oh man, really good conversation. Edit this. Let me think. Some final thoughts.
I mean, you kind of wrapped it up good there, but is there something I didn't ask that I should have?
No. I think this has been a really, really cool experience for me. So I thank you. Well, maybe just highlighting a need for the Ethics Award nominations and also for youth membership.
Yes.
We struggle, and I know, trying to find Ethics Award nominees at the youth level. They're not members of the ABCA. Oftentimes I have to encourage membership first and then nominate them. So we're looking for tools, ways to entice youth coaches. We're looking to get more participation for youth coaches. I think that's a kind of.
And Rob and I are going to talk about that a lot because he's the youth committee chair. So he's brought some really cool things to the table about how to get more youth coach involvement. So that'll be some things that Rob and I are going to discuss in the next episode. So I'm excited for these because we haven't done a lot of the youth episodes, but this is the right time for this with seasons getting ready to start. And it is our largest growing membership, even though, it might be low, like youth travel, high school, that's 68% of our membership now. So we are growing immensely in those areas. And so we need to continue to have our footprint in those areas and try to help because it's going to grow the game. It's going to make the game stronger if we have good youth coaches and good parent interaction at that level. It's going to allow kids that want to keep playing, men and women that want to keep playing the game and want to give back. I mean, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and it's going to deliver the elite coach a better athlete.
Yes,
right. More prepared and more well-rounded. It helps across the board. So, yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Daniel, I had a great time, man. This was awesome. I appreciate it.
All right, Ryan. Thank you.